Hello, beautiful spring afternoon here in York, and I think for some it might be almost time to think about dusting the boots off and heading out to the hills. So I thought I'd do a quick turbo waffle little video about just what I pack again for a kind of spring day out in the hills. So, rucksack. Always just worth checking it over really. If you haven't used it for a while, just to make sure that you've got everything you kind of need that's kind of ready and stashed. So just to start off with really, my top pouch. Not quite the time of year for it yet, but I've got some tick tweezers, sterile alcohol wipes. I've got some Germaline, some anti-sand, and a bit of E45 just in case, and some paracetamol and ibuprofen tablets. And this just sits at the top of my bag, a little bit of an ouch pouch really, and that's just a quick easy access in case I need it. Something I tend to get asked quite a lot about is how do I pack? So how do I know what I need to have, when I need to have it? And a lot of that will depend on what is the weather doing. What am I doing? Where am I going? I typically will stick the safety stuff that I'm not expecting to use right at the bottom of my bag. And the stuff I don't generally tend to use is a group shelter. Very useful thing to carry though, weighs almost nothing. It's basically a poleless tent. This is an 8-person. Now I think you want to be extremely familiar with anyone you want to share this with, but these can get very, very warm quickly if you have a casualty. So that tends to go into a dry bag. It's going to go at the bottom of my bag. So even when I'm out in the rain, all of this will still remain dry. I've also got my first aid kit. It's really important at the start of each season just to check through, make sure there's no holes that have kind of crept into your bag. Make sure your dry proof bag is in order, but also to check the contents of your first aid kit. There are use by dates, and these are quite important to adhere to. So even on plasters, for example, there's a use by date, and there's a reason for that, because after a while the fabric starts to degrade and you can actually cause more damage using an out-of-date plaster. For example, little bits will get into the bloodstream. So I'll go through my first aid kit at the start of each season and just replace anything that's pretty much expired. We'll do a separate video if you want to know what I've got in the first aid kit. Comments below. I've also got my little disaster blaster, and this has got things like cable ties just in case something snaps on your bag. Spare pair of bootlaces just in case a bootlace snaps, because that can be a real problem out in the hills. I've also got a little bit of gaffer tape in here wrapped around a plastic straw just to minimise the amount of room it takes. I've got a little spare head torch in here with 3 batteries, and the batteries are obviously removed from it. And this is just a little penknife, and this is just useful things in case something does go wrong and I need to improvise or be creative. Now this will go into, as I said, a dry bag. Stuff rarely gets used, and it generally kind of lives at the bottom of my bag. And because it's at the bottom of my bag, this is where all the rain, on those really miserable days, tends to pool. So I wrap this in a second bag. Now I'm lucky with my rucksack, I've got a lower compartment that I can put things into. Some rucksacks are literally just a sack, and that's great. They can just sit in the bottom. I'm not expecting to use this in an absolute emergency. If I really need to, I've got no problem shifting everything out and getting access to this. But I'm lucky with this rucksack. I've got a lower pouch at the bottom I can put this into. Where I'm going and what the weather's doing will have a big impact on what I pack and how I pack it in spring. If I'm going to the Highlands this time of year, it's still full winter in the Cairngorms, Lochaber and a few other places. Do you know what? I've got some G10s here, and I've also I can put on any old boots, and I've also got an ice axe and some ski goggles, because if snow's being whipped up by wind It's like being sandblasted in the face and you literally cannot see. So again, just my winter kit in case I need to use it. If I'm going to the Lake District or Snowdonia this time of year, I may pack it. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. However, if I'm going to the Lake District, I'm probably likely to put this lower down in my bag because I'm not really expecting to use this. This I'll attach onto the outside of my bag when I set off. So depending on the weather, this will then dictate what's coming next. I've got some waterproof trousers, and again, these will just sit in a small waterproof bag. I've got my main outer jacket. This is a Paramo. I think they're brilliant. They actively expel water, and they're also quite warm. So this time of year, Paramo jackets are really, really good. They can kind of serve the purpose of several jackets. And it's just get the air out of this, and we can compress it down. Now, if I know, for example, I'm going to get out of the car, it's going to be pouring with rain, but that rain will clear. Obviously, I'm going to be wearing this to begin with. But on a day like this, there's actually a blue sky above me. I'm not going to need it straight away. But I would never go into the mountains without this. I've also got a mid-layer. I could put on top of this if I wanted to. If I'm getting a bit cold, remember the old saying, be bold, start cold. It's better to get moving fast, get the blood going, and then you won't need to put this mid-layer on. As you get higher up, a bit of wind might be coming in. A little mid-layer like this might be really good, and you don't particularly want to put on your big waterproof. So I've also got my hat and gloves, because higher up it might just get a little bit cold, a little bit windy. I've also got these. I find these really, really useful. Little hotties hand warmers. So if you get cold hands, stick one of these in your gloves. It'll really, really warm you up. It says they'll be warm for 8 hours. I've generally found they're warmer for a lot longer than that. If I'm expecting to be putting on my coats, these will be near the top. It depends what the weather's going to be doing. I've then got my lunch and some water that I'll be able to put inside here. And I'm just looking at the weather forecast. What am I likely to need? Am I going to need my waterproofs before lunch? In which case, my food is going lower down in the bag. And it's as simple as that. I'm just thinking, what is the weather doing? What is it going to dictate my day is going to look like? And therefore, where do I need to put everything into my bag? So, I can close this compartment up a little bit into my top pants now. Okay, it's still early March. Head torch, I might be coming down in the dark if I have a really big day. Always check that this is charged. I've obviously got my spare head torch in my little disaster blaster pack. I do carry a cheap GPS, and this is pretty much only good really to just give me a 6-figure grid reference if I just need to, I can find myself. Buff, always useful. And believe it or not, certainly on a day like today, factor 30 sun cream and sunglasses. It's often this time of year, February sometimes, the worst sunburn I've ever had has been in midwinter when I've been out in the mountains being caught unawares. And of course, never leave home without it, a map in an Ortlieb map case with a little clip, so I can either clip it to my jacket or I can clip it to my bag when I actually need to access my map. I've got my compass with 5 pacing beads. We talk about these in National Navigation and Ward Scheme courses. With a clip, and again, this is generally clipped to me, but I'll generally also stack it in one place in my bag, which is in one of these little side pockets here. So I've got this easily accessible and handy. I do sometimes carry a walking pole. I tend to only use them myself if I'm out on an expedition and I've got a really heavy expert rucksack, and I'll tend to have 2 of these. But these can be quite useful at the start of the season if you're not quite in as much shape as you thought you were going to be, or someone's got a little bit of an injury. This can really help speed things up and also give a little bit of confidence to people. So I'll tend to carry 1 of these. 2 is a bit faffy. Sometimes don't need them, again, unless I'm on an expedition. So food and water in there as well. Feels really heavy. It's also worth doing, I've had my boots out quite recently, they're going out again fairly soon, just to check over your boots at the start of the season. If you haven't used them, it's always worth, take them out, give them a bit of a clean, just run them under the tap, get some wax, give them a recoat, just make sure that there's no cracking starting to appear on the underside of the soles. Also just check that your bootlaces, although you've got a spare pair of bootlaces, just check that they're still intact and not starting to sort of fragment and fall apart. And that is what I would carry in my spring bag. And if anyone's interested, I'm running a couple of refresher days just to sort of get warm up really, on the 21st and 22nd of March to Scarfell Pike via corridor route, and to Great Gable and Friends with the epic views from Windy Gap on the Sunday. So feel free to come and join us. It should be a really nice couple of days out.